All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. I'm your host, Victor Rigoli, and I have a special guest with me today, Kris Davenport. Kris, thank you so much for joining me today, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you for inviting me.
Oh, yeah, sure. I started this a few weeks ago just as an opportunity to get to know more artists, but also give them some exposure as well, but just to kind of hear their stories. I did an interview earlier this week with Julie Wilkerson there at Making Arts Alliance, and that was very interesting and just kind of getting to know Julie a little bit better and everything. And although she's not an artist, she does have an art kind of background working with the Making Arts Alliance. And so that was just really cool just to kind of get to know her a little bit better and kind of hear her story and what led up to her becoming the executive director there. So
Awesome.
I just want to hear your story. How long have you been painting? What you enjoy painting? What some of your challenges are, what some of your goals are, and that kind of thing. So I'll just let you kind of start, and I may ask you some questions every now and then. Just kind of jump in and ask a question or two. So take it away.
Perfect. Well, I grew up with a cousin that is a brilliant sketch and pastel artist, and I would look at her work and I would just be in awe. And so I would take my little sketchbook and I'd draw and I draw and I draw. I never went to college for art. I just did the 4 years of high school. And I remember my art teacher challenged us to do a watercolor. And as I'm painting, a fellow student came by and said, "You don't know what you're doing." And so I put my paintbrush down and I didn't, that was 1981.
Oh
And I
wow.
didn't pick it up again
Oh,
until literally 2016,
okay.
when, yeah, a friend of mine, a local artist, Ann Clark, invited me. She knew I had just um, had to medical retire from being a massage therapist, and I was in a funk, and she knew I needed some encouragement, and we had talked about her art. And so she invited me to the Fine Art Society meeting. And Micah Gogan was there doing a presentation.
Okay.
And he invited us up afterward to do a little sample board. And I was hooked.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And I
How
signed up for
about that?
his workshop, I think 2 weekends later. And I have not stopped since 2016.
Wow. How
Yeah.
about that? 9 years now. Goodness
Yes.
gracious. Yeah. So what is it you like to paint? What are you passionate about painting?
I really love mixed media.
Okay.
It helps me in two ways. One, I tend to get very, very tight, and I get caught up in the detail and I never feel finished when I have to do, I shouldn't say have to, but I get to do more figurative paintings. So mixed media allows me to get a little messy, not worry about the lines, not worry about the exactness of it. That's my preference.
Right.
But what I've found is people really love realism. They love
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to go, "Oh, it looks just like the painting or the
Right.
picture, photo." Yeah.
Right. Gotcha. Gotcha. So, I know that you have painted some birds and things, some animals and things like that. So, what do you enjoy about doing that kind of art as well?
So I've been working with the local Audubon Society. Every year they put out their collection of birds that they've taken that year, and they invited Micah's students to take a look and see if we'd like to interpret them. And then we show at the end, the beginning of the year. And I'm drawn to uh, the again, I get to be exact. I get to go in and try to recreate the actual bird, and I find that
Right.
challenging, and that sells. The paintings that are most realistic seem to sell better than the mixed media pieces that I
Okay.
enjoy making.
Okay. Now, did they pick the bird for you to paint, or did you have the luxury of picking it yourself?
No, they have like a 6 page, it's called the box. I can't remember what the app is called, but you get to go through and select which bird that speaks to you most. And
Okay.
interesting,
Okay.
I never look at the photographer's name, but
Mm-hmm.
3 years in a row, I picked the same photographer. Her name is Joanne Gerard, and she's brilliant. She and her
How
husband are
about
just
that?
brilliant. Yeah. And
Wow.
I had to go outside my box this year because they didn't participate in this year's selections, but it's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah, that would be, for me, it'd be very challenging if they said, okay, paint this bird.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know about that. Roadrunner, I don't think so. But maybe a cardinal, I could do
Yeah.
that, or blue jay.
I
But
find ones
yeah,
with attitude. Almost
ostrich.
every year they've got an attitude. They're like looking
Yeah.
over their shoulder or they're
Uh-huh.
giving a look. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you find most challenging?
When to stop.
When to stop, or
Yes.
when to call it complete?
When painting realism, I have a hard time saying, okay, it's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you paint various size paintings? I mean, what's the largest you've painted before? What's the smallest size you've painted?
So right now, you can see a little bit of it behind me. This is the biggest, it's a mixed media, an abstract, my very first large abstract that I'm doing.
Okay. Okay.
That's the largest I've ever done.
What
I think
size is that,
um,
dimension wise? Do you know?
I think it's 24 by 36.
Okay.
Yeah, I've done quite a few 18 by 24s.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but they're a figurative, confrontational figurative kind of pieces. Um, my comfort wheelhouse is 9 by 12.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I have seen some artists do some real small, almost postage stamp size. In fact, at the first first night, this earlier this month, I went into 567 and they had an artist in there, and she did some small works, and they were little bumblebees, and I couldn't
Wow.
believe how much detail she had in those, and they were just awesome. I really
My eyesight
really
won't allow
enjoyed those. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
that.
I had to get close to them. But yeah, she did an awesome job. But yeah, that can be challenging. That would be extremely challenging for me. Painting
Yeah,
something that small. Even painting a large scale painting can be challenging too, because everything's just kind of blown up, and sometimes you lose that perception of things, and that can be very challenging as well. So
exactly.
yeah. So do you have a studio there in your home?
I do have created, we had this front room in our house that we never used. It had pretty furniture. It had, everything was just in its place, but nobody ever came in here.
Okay.
So when I retired, um, I had a little table behind me. The furniture was still here, but I made a table.
Hmm.
And then as workshops happened and as classes happened, my materials got bigger, bigger, more and more and more. And so I kind of squeezed out the furniture and took over the whole room.
I know an artist. I haven't. I went over to his home. He's here in Warner Robins. He's actually in the military with the Air Force. He's associated with the Air Force, but he does paintings as well, and he has them in some galleries out west. But I
His
went
name's
over to his
Scott.
home. No, his name is
No.
Warren Neary. Yeah.
Oh,
And but anyway, I went over to his home, and this is back, gosh, about 5 years ago when I first started, and knew a little bit about him being an artist. And I said, well, let me go over and just kind of talk to him about some things. And when I walked into his house, the living room was his studio.
wow.
And it was like, oh my gosh, I don't think my wife would allow that. So, having a room like that is not uncommon. Um, but yeah, I now when I started, and I don't know if I shared this when you were at my home last month, but I started in the kitchen, and 2 months later, my wife said I needed the kitchen table back, and so I had to find somewhere else to go. And so there would be no way I could be in the dining room or anything like that. But it works for him and his family, and they have like a dining room area, and that's really the kind of their den. That's kind of their living room. So he the whole big living room foyer
Mhm.
area is nothing but his studio. But
Wow.
it's awesome. I mean, it really is. He can do large pieces. He's got this easel that he built, and then he's got the big metal toolbox on rollers that have all his supplies in it and everything. So it's like, oh my gosh. So I think my wife is glad I'm upstairs and
Oh,
kind
your
of
place is amazing. It's like an
out.
engineer's room. It's
Oh,
so amazing.
oh, thank you. Yeah, kind of out of the way. But anyway, I love it up here. But yeah, let's see. Trying to think of some of the other things, that might be interesting to ask you. Are you selling some of your artwork?
I have. I remember I was just telling the story to our class the other day. I sold my first piece in 2017. It was a mixed media piece, a little tiny bird that I had painted for my grandson. It was little bird found, and it sold. And I think I walked on air for probably a good solid week the first
Oh,
time
wow.
mine sold.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and
That's a
then
good feeling, isn't it? It's like, wow, I sold something.
absolutely
Yeah,
somebody liked what I did.
somebody liked my work. They bought it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, and now of course I've sold to some friends and family, but mostly I found where I sell most of my work is at shows. There's Georgia
Hmm.
National Fair or um, local art exhibits that 478 or Middle Georgia Art Association puts on. That's where I
Okay.
sell most of my work.
Okay. Okay. So you have work. Do you currently have work at 567 there in Macon?
I don't right now.
Okay. Okay.
I have I have a problem with procrastination. So what happens is shows allow to give me a deadline. When I have a deadline, I can kick out pieces. But when I
Right.
don't have a deadline, I tend to
Yeah.
procrastinate and put things on the back burner. I'm not as
Uh,
disciplined as you. I heard you and Kara talk, and that you set aside almost every single day to be in your studio, and I've
I
lost that
try to be.
discipline. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to be. I have a calendar. I have an Outlook calendar, and I block out time on the calendar to do certain things. It may be an hour to 2 hours for a small painting session, large painting session, watch a tutorial, work on painting surfaces, whatever it may be. Now, do I stick to that schedule
Mhm.
all the time? No, I don't stick to it. But at least I have it there and it reminds me. I get reminders that pop up as, oh, yeah, I need to be doing that. And one
That's
of the
awesome.
things that I want to get into, and I've done it a couple of them, is doing some portrait work because I have people ask me all the time. And I'll do it occasionally, but it's not something I'm real comfortable with, but I will do it. It's kind of like you in a certain degree. I kind of procrastinate until it starts getting close to the deadline. And it's like, okay, I got to hurry up and get this thing done and get it out of here. But I used to have on my calendar a couple times a week portrait practice. And when I set my calendar for this year, for somehow, I don't know how, it fell off the calendar. So I don't know if I inadvertently left it off or what, but I need to add that back on there because that's the only way for me. It just works for me because I have to, set that up and I when I was working, we did this kind of personality test, and I was leaning more toward the gold personality, which organization and everything and structure. And so, although my wife could probably tell you, I haven't been diagnosed with ADD, but sometimes I think I have it, because I'll get started on something and then it's like, okay, I'm bored with that. Let me go over here and do something else because I have all kinds of stuff going on in my studio. So, uh, and it helps me to kind of get my mind off things sometimes. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah, I'm one of
that's
those
interesting.
rebels that if you tell me to do something, I'm probably not going to do it. And so
Yeah,
that's why it has to be something motivated by me and then a deadline involved, or
right,
it's probably not
right,
going to get finished.
right. So the piece that you're working on right now, the one that's
Mhm.
over maybe I think maybe your left shoulder, kind of back that way, is that a commission piece or is that going to go in a show or?
This was so I don't have any of my own art hanging in my home.
Oh, okay.
And so I've been talking to Micah probably for the past 3 years saying, I want to create a really big abstract piece. I
Mm-hmm.
don't do abstract because I'm very visual. So I normally have to look at something to be able to create something else.
Right, right.
And this all comes from internal, whatever you're putting on there, whatever you're feeling, whatever emotions popping up. And that's difficult for me. So um, it's in a work in progress. I'm working on a commission right now. for a pet portrait.
Okay,
So that's the, so I have to have multiple pieces going at one time so I don't get fixated. Or if I
I
don't want to
gotcha.
avoid something, so I have a couple of pieces going so I can bounce between energies there.
I can relate to that. I may have 4 or 5 different projects going on, different size paintings. I might be working on painting surfaces, stretching canvases or something, but yeah, I have different things going on. But
Yeah, your
yeah, I have.
master's golf paintings, I have to double take and say, is that a photograph or is that
Oh,
that's
thank
his
you.
painting?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
amazing,
Yeah. Thank you.
amazing.
I've had a lot of people say, I thought it was a photograph. No.
Yep.
And the weird thing is I put on see, my wife asked me last night, she said, well, how many Facebook pages do you? I said, well, I got my normal Victor Rigoli, and then I created like a business one, Victor Rigoli Fine Art. And then I started this podcast with Hazel Caldwell at Greenlight Gallery. And so we called it Between Two Easels. And I created a Facebook page for that, even though we're not doing a podcast anymore. Um, but it's still out there. And then I created the one for Artist Stories in Middle Georgia. So I guess I've got 4 out there
That's
right
awesome.
now. So yeah, it was like, oh my gosh. And then trying to keep all that updated. But I think I put out there on one of my Facebook pages, I did a survey. Okay, vote on your favorite hole at the Masters. And the 13th one, and I said, okay, it won, so I'm going to be painting the 13th. And I just put a picture of the 13th hole out there. I had several people say, oh, that's a beautiful painting. I said, no, it's not a painting. It's a picture. I may paint from that picture, but it's a photo. They thought it was my painting. I said, no, because I mean, it was beyond my skill level, to do. But yeah, it was kind of funny. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Sometimes people don't realize what all goes on in a painting. And so I'm sure that may be a challenge for artists too, as to how do I price my work? Have you run into that sometimes?
so I Micah gets on to me all the time. I still suffer from imposter syndrome
Right.
that, oh, I don't have any formal education. I don't, how can I put this price on it when I'm not really an artist yet? And so I just got a good lesson in it this a past show in Macon where the venue took 40%. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, oh man, I barely made my substrate and not even my time, just the substrate and a little bit of materials back. So that was an eye opener for me that I need to
Oh
start
yeah.
elevating my price point.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely do. I mean, some artists use a square inch, and I usually do that. It could be $1, $2, $3 kind of thing. Uh, but the more, I mean, especially like oil painting, it's a little different maybe from mixed media because you've got so much into that, than just, people do different things and different textures and stuff like that. So you have a lot going on in that painting. So yeah, it could be a little difficult. But you're right. You put it in a gallery or show, they're going to get 30 to 40%. And it's like, okay, unfortunately, you got to mark that up high enough to where you're making, enough to make a profit, but
Right.
you're just, you can't mark it up so high to where, somebody doesn't want to pay that amount for it,
Exactly.
so it's yeah, it can be a challenge. So I've got some stuff coming up in July in St. Simons, and it's like, well, the gallery will get 20% and the hotel gets 20% and I'll get the
Wow.
60%. And so it's like, it's a 60-40 deal. And it's like, and they advised me, said, well, you want to price it enough to where you'll make enough of your piece. But then once you start calculating all that, it's like, wow, it gets up there. Now I have done this before. I've had some stuff in a gallery, um, and somebody didn't buy it at the time it was at the gallery, and they're a real good friend of mine, and
Uh,
so I gave them the discounted non-gallery price, so
nice.
because all the profit was going to me. So
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I don't have to pay a gallery. But I'll charge a little less,
That's smart. And
so
and you get the
yeah.
exposure. People see your name, they see your
E-
work. Then they can jump
Exactly.
on your social media and contact you.
Exactly. Exactly. And that to me, I don't, people say, oh, okay, you're selling your work and that kind of thing. And, I have a website, but I've sold one painting off my website in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
And kind of like what happened with you, by the time you pay the commission to the gallery and all this kind of stuff, it's like, I barely made any money. It was at Christmas, and they bought this painting, and it was like a 6 by 6, and I called it a Van Gogh Christmas, and it was kind of the starry night, and it had a Christmas tree and presents and all that kind of stuff. And I got an email saying, hey, somebody's bought your painting, and I factored in a little bit for shipping, but they lived in Washington State. And then by the time I insured it, and I think I made $6 off the painting after it's all
oh
said and
yeah,
done, because it wasn't that much. I mean, it was a small piece, but then the shipping and all that kind of stuff, and shipping's outrageous now.
it is.
But yeah, it's like, so my wife said, you need to go out there and bump things up and at least maybe charge a certain percentage for shipping. And that's what I did going forward. But
Yeah,
I've sold
that's
more
smart.
stuff just off social media and word of mouth than a website. So,
Yeah.
um, do you have a website or anything, or just use social media?
Social media for now.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little art album on my Facebook page where my dad said, I want to see all your art. So it's
Okay.
interesting to see from 2016 to 2025. Yeah, it's the difference in my artwork is pretty cool. Um,
Progression. You've
yeah,
gotten
I
better, I'm
hope so.
sure.
I hope
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
the
Yeah.
different modalities, like I went to Wild Acres 2 years ago and took a class with Kathy from Making Mud and found that I loved working with clay. We did I don't, I'm sorry, Kathy, I can't remember the name of the process, but we made these freestanding figures, 3D figures, and everybody was so different. And I loved the process.
Wow.
Same with, I took a class with Coraloy uh, McWhorter up in Wild Acres also with linocut and printmaking, and I'm madly in love with those modalities too. So the more I get exposed, the more people, more workshops that pop up, my my collection of supplies gets bigger and bigger.
Oh, I bet. I bet. So, have you done any more with clay or pottery or anything since that time? Or is that something
Uh,
that you think about maybe pursuing a little bit more?
I do. I would love. I have not. I keep wanting to, and again, it's my procrastination, and I get filled up with little projects, and then my anxiety kind of makes me covet my alone time for a minute, so I don't go out so much. But the lino cut, I still practice my lino cut. I try to do Christmas cards, holiday cards. I do. She challenged us to do winter solstice cards for her every year. Oh,
Okay.
Coraloy does, and so that keeps me in that modality too.
Okay. You talked about, doing some Christmas cards. I don't know if I mentioned it when you were here last month, but I started working with gouache a little bit. And I don't know if you've done anything with gouache, but it's an interesting medium. It's kind of like a little bit like watercolor and acrylic mixed together, kind of thing. But I was doing like some Christmas cards, little name tags for gifts and everything. So everybody that we gave a gift to had a hand painted gift, card on it or tag
Awesome.
on it, which was kind of neat. And I sold some cards, but when you get down to it, I sold somebody like 30 Christmas cards. And so it's like,
Wow.
okay, how much time goes into each? And you want to price it to where it's reasonable, but yet you want to make sure you're compensated for your time and materials and things like that. So I think I came up with something that was reasonable, and they agreed to it and that kind of thing, which was good. And that was a lot of fun. And I need to get back into that because I haven't done anything with that since Christmas, but I need to get back into that. Um, so, do you mostly use acrylics? Or do you use some oil paint?
So my passion is oil. I
Okay.
love working in oil. Um, Again, it allows me to be more figurative, realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I can get really lost in it. But again, it's that procrastination thing. So if something's due, I'll just go to my mixed media acrylic. But if
Gotcha.
it's something that I painted my best friend's granddaughter saying goodbye to her. She shows cows since she was a little tiny girl,
Oh, okay.
and I was able to. She was loving on the cow, and I go, that would be an amazing fair picture. So I made sure I
Oh,
did
wow.
that. It was
Yeah.
personal. I love them to pieces, and I felt really lucky to be able to recreate that in oil, and I was really happy
Okay.
with that. Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to enter some paintings into the fair this year?
Yeah, I've only missed a couple of years, but yeah, I went
Okay.
last year, and that was a lot of fun. I had a challenge with the fire eater category because I thought, oh, everyone's going to do certain things. So I decided to paint my niece as a fire eater, and so that was really
Ah,
fun. Yeah, yeah.
okay.
So
Okay.
I sold. One of my biggest successes and my biggest commission came from actually um, my raven placed, got a ribbon 2 years ago, and somebody really wanted it, but somebody else already bought it. So she contacted me. And again, that imposter syndrome popped up. And I'm like, oh, I don't really do commissions, but. And so I said, I'll paint 3 ravens and you can take your pick of whichever one you want.
Well,
And
that's
so
an idea. I like
yeah, I
that.
created, and
Yeah.
I said, and no pressure. If you don't want them, that's okay. Just give
Right.
me the right to
Right.
resell them somewhere else.
That's right. That's
And
right.
she bought all 3.
Oh,
And
wow.
yeah, and so she lived out in California. So that was my furthest away that I've ever sold.
That's
So
a great idea. I hadn't thought about that, especially like painting something, a subject like that. It's like, well, what if I do two or three and you just pick the one you want? And
it
you
took
were
the pressure
fortunate
off.
enough to, yeah, it
Really did.
does. And it's like,
Yeah,
okay, well, I can be creative and paint something and not feel like they want this and I've got to
exactly.
paint to that,
Exactly.
but I can just be creative. And if they don't like it, that, hey, that's fine. And, but if they do, and in your case, they bought all three, which was
Yeah.
fabulous,
That
so
was exciting. That was
yeah,
another walk on
yeah.
air time. Yeah.
Oh, I bet. I bet. I want to get back to asking you about the piece that you're working on, mixed media, and this kind of abstract thing that you're doing. I've never really tried that before because I'm like you. I have to see something and paint from that.
Yeah.
Because I've tried to do things, and I don't know if my mind is just so screwy, it just doesn't doesn't look good. It doesn't come. So, what goes into that? I mean, what how do you create that? I mean, are there certain emotions that you're feeling, or you just start putting paint on canvas, or what's the process?
So I couldn't do it intuitively, so I had to take the workshop.
Okay,
I kept encouraging Micah to have it, and he did. And what we did was we took a photograph. It didn't matter what the photograph was, but what we did, we blew it up so much that it was no longer identifiable as whatever it was, right? So
okay,
mine was a picture of a waterfall my husband had taken over in Croatia, and I blew it up to where it was no longer identifiable. And he then challenged us to draw what we saw in this kind of abstract field. And then it was all abandoned. It was just let go of everything and just slap paint on and texture. And it just was like being a kindergartner again and
oh
playing.
wow,
Yeah.
yeah,
And as you did more, you'd say, oh, well, how about if I swipe here? And how about it's just not my nature. So it
yeah,
really pushes me
yeah,
out of my comfort zone for sure.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I may
And
have to experiment with that sometime.
yeah,
Yeah,
my
just
my
try it
problem
out.
is you think, oh, well, it's about done. No, no, you got about 10 more
Mm-hmm.
layers to put on it.
Oh
So
wow,
yeah, he goes, I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. I think I can hang this in my house. And he goes, no, now you gotta deconstruct it, you gotta tear it all up. And I'm like, what? So my heart started you could see my heart. He goes, take the paint and just smear it across your painting. And I'm like, I don't know if I can.
yeah,
So he
yeah,
smeared it, and I'm like, oh,
yeah.
here we go.
That's
So,
right. You
yep,
started, got to
yep,
finish. Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting.
So it's about,
Yeah.
I think, fourth layer now I'm at now.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Okay, that's interesting. I may have to talk to you about that sometime and just
Yeah,
get some ideas, and or maybe come see the process and learn
yeah.
from that. So
I've
yeah,
also
I
been
know.
told I'm a dark artist. I've heard it come
Oh,
up a couple of
I think you
times.
mentioned that when you were here. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, and so
yeah.
then I started looking around my room going, "Oh, I think he's right. I think people are right." I tend to go for those dark, moody
Okay,
paintings, which is what this
gotcha.
has ended up being. Yeah.
Okay, well, from what I can see, it looks like some grays and blacks and that kind of thing. So I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay,
It's got some
awesome.
phthalo and it has some reds and
Okay,
yeah, buff
okay.
and white and
All right.
there's
Look forward to seeing the finished product. Yeah,
thanks.
yeah,
Thanks.
yeah. Just thinking about it, I mean, I mean, we all go through different moods, and sometimes as artists, we have some anxiety, some depression, and things like that. And I think, and then there's art can, and Micah does this and has worked with people, and I know Hazel Caldwell does this as well, art therapy and helping people to express, something that's going on inside. It's hard for them to verbalize it, but if they can start with some paint and putting something on a canvas or even pencils and drawing some things out, it helps them to express some of their thoughts and feelings that they're having. And that allows the therapist to, okay, why did you use this color, or why did you use this shape, or why did you draw it this way? And it kind of leads into some discussion to kind of help them deal with what they're feeling or what they have internalized. So yeah,
Exactly. Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's neat.
Yeah, he art therapies me every week.
Yeah,
He sneaks a little bit of it in there and I don't even know it's
yeah,
happening. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's therapeutic for me too. I mean, it's an escape. It's kind of weird. And sometimes I feel like I might become a little antisocial because I'm kind of in my own world up
Yeah.
here and get away from everything. And even though I do have a TV that I'll play YouTube and movies and stuff like that, but it's kind of in the background and it's keeping me, it's like somebody's in the room with me, so it's not just dead silent. I got to have some noise going on. So yeah, I like to watch old reruns from the 60s and little sitcom shows and stuff, so
Betty
it kind of
Davis movies
entertains
for
me.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, that's so cool. Anything else in your art career here that since in the last 9 years, past 9 years, where do you see yourself in the next 3 to 5 years? Let me ask that.
So I got into it because I lost my career that I love so much, and I got back from my patients, from my clients, just as much as I would give them. And so
Hmm.
I turned to art to kind of fill that void. And when you lose your career, as a as most people will feel, there's a void that happens. And if you don't
Oh
fill it
yeah.
with something, other stuff comes in. So
Right.
art has really helped me bridge that segment. So where I needed it as almost like a lifeline before, it has now become joyful. So I would love to keep pushing myself with different modalities, different textures, different. Um, I I have not been successful with collage, and I'm wondering
Okay.
if it's my control issue that I'm not able to do it really well. So maybe
Yeah.
pushing myself. I struggle with watercolor. Why do I struggle? Because it's not very forgiving.
Hmm.
So I can
That's so
identify
true.
certain
Yeah.
things. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So I'd
Mm.
like to challenge myself more. This is a big challenge for me. I didn't think I was going to be able to do it because, as most people know, I'm incredibly introverted, shy.
Oh,
I
you're
mean,
doing
I love
great. This has
people.
been
I love people.
fantastic. Yeah.
I love
We've
people,
been
but
talking over
but
30 minutes now.
I know I can't
And isn't
believe
that
it.
amazing? Yeah. Time
I,
flies. Time
the
flies.
safety of my own home, I think, is what
Yeah.
sealed it for me.
In your comfort zone, you
Yeah.
know. And I met an artist last, well, I guess it was last Friday. I was up at the Making Arts Alliance for the 478 Creatives. They had a thing going on up there where they they have a show going on this month,
Mhm.
and they brought in some interior designers to meet some of the artists that had artwork in the show to kind of network and say, hey, there are artists in the community. So if you're doing some remodeling or interior design or something, think about some of the local artists that you could tap into to say, hey, I know
Brilliant.
somebody that could paint something or they already have something, which was great. And I had a couple of paintings, four actually, down at Greenlight Gallery, and I needed to pick them up. And it's just been kind of hit and miss, finding Hazel there and the doors open. So I found out that she was coming, but it was going to be about 30 minutes later. So I said, well, I'm going to kill some time. So I was walking down Poplar, and lo and behold, right below 3rd Street, um, Jeannie Lane Sheridan has opened up a new studio right there on Poplar just in late February. So I walked in, talked to her. I'm going to have her on a podcast next week. Actually, I'm going up to Macon. We're going to do it from her studio, which is great. I'm excited about
Awesome.
that. But just, there's just so many artists out there and new ones popping up all the time. But yeah, who would have thought that I would get into doing podcasting, and
Right.
being able to, because she mentioned to me, she said, well, do you do some plein air? And I says, well, a little bit, but I'm comfortable in my studio. That's my comfort zone because I took some lessons from Micah, and I was so out of my element. I didn't have what I needed. I didn't have certain brushes. I didn't have certain paints. And I just felt so out of place. And I kind of struggled with it a little bit the first session or two. But after a while, I kind of got used to it and said, okay, this is what the environment is, and I kind of relaxed and everything, and got to know some of the other people there, which was kind of cool and interesting. But yeah, being in that comfort zone, it's sometimes you have to push ourselves and stretch a little bit and step outside. But we see the growth. Hindsight's always 2020. Just like you said earlier, looking back to some of your early work and what you're doing now, it's probably like leaps and bounds,
Yeah.
beyond just starting off. And then I've seen some of that. My wife points that out too, and I see some of that myself. And we don't like to pat ourselves on the back or toot our horn, but the more you do it and the more you apply yourself, the better you do get at it, and people start recognizing that. So
Yeah.
yeah, keep on pushing on it, and
Keep growing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, keep growing. When I was I don't know who came up with this saying, but I heard this a long time ago. It's like be green and growing. And I thought, what the heck does that mean? Green and growing. And the guy explained it, and he says, well, think about plants. They're growing, they're green and everything. But, when the fruit comes, it starts off kind of green, and then it starts to ripe. And after it starts to ripe, it starts to rot. And I thought about that, and I said, yeah, because you always got to be kind of green and growing and looking at new things and trying new things, because you can get stagnant. And if you get stagnant, you're not growing, and you're kind of
Correct.
rotting and falling behind. So it's like, okay, maybe that's my motto: just be green and growing. So yeah.
Perfect.
But anyway,
Perfect.
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kris. I've enjoyed this to get to know
Me
you a little
too.
bit better and have you talk a little bit about yourself and your artwork and everything. It's just, oh man, I've learned so much and appreciate all your time today. Um, Thanks everybody for tuning in. Appreciate you checking us out today. Please like and subscribe to my channel. We're trying to get it to grow a little bit there. Share it with your friends, fellow artists, that kind of thing. If there's something that you like or know an artist that you'd like to see me interview, please leave me a comment, and I'll be glad to reach out to them and get them on the show. But thanks, Kris. Thank you
Thank
so
you so much,
much,
Victor.
and we'll see you soon. Take care.